So another quite important part of the whole album is the synth sounds. And
Yes.
maybe we should talk about them a bit more and show a bit more of them. I would propose we choose the song Boomerang, which has quite a lot of them, and they are layered, and there is a lot going on at the same time. So it might be the perfect song to show the importance of synth for this album.
Yes, there's quite a few on it. And very often it's like what you described when tweaking the drum sounds. You listen to one basic sound and then you wonder what's still missing. So very often when we decided which sounds to keep and which to dispose, we found that we almost every time kept the basic sound but added another layer or a third or a fourth until we felt that the sound was well-rounded in a way that we imagined it.
Right.
So let's start with the main theme from Boomerang. I'm choosing one random sound layer, which is Ethereal Earth. Which has a bit of a pipe organ feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second layer...
It sounds very far away, which is completely different to the character the intro has, because it's very in your face.
Yes, and that's where the other sounds come into play. Then we've got here a muted harp, which makes it very, very close instantly. And then third, we've got a classic analog synth from Analog Dreams. Yes, and then it all gets doubled in the octave and sounds like that. So it's basically three different sounds layered in two octaves that result in the one sound that you can hear on the album, and we use that technique quite often, I guess.
Yeah, we did. Yes.
Okay, then let's have a look at another part in the song, and to show you the importance of all those synth layers, we're gonna listen to a small part of a section first without any of them. I'll completely turn them off and hope that the remaining stuff is still working. So we should now listen to drums, bass, rhythm and lead guitars. Let's give it a shot. Yeah, like you're in a rehearsal room, basically.
It does.
So,
yes.
Now let's check what I've added. Again, we've got the main theme, which is split onto different tracks together. So it's pretty similar sounds. It's a soft piano, which was completely replaced afterwards. And again, the analog synth. Then there's another melodic layer, which I think is just a transition from the previous part. Yeah, that's all of it. And then it's getting interesting. Then all the orchestral stuff comes in. And I want to show you this layer by layer, starting at the bottom with the contrabass, which isn't there. So we take the cello. And it's all BBC Symphonic Orchestra instruments.
The free edition.
The free edition. 'Cause we need sponsoring.
Yeah.
Okay, then as I said, the piano, we leave that out for the moment. So we've got another layer of four-voiced choir, which I'm using Olympus elements for. And I really like the sound of this library.
Yeah, I mean, you used it on the whole album, didn't you? I mean, there are no real voices in choir tracks, are there?
No,
I don't
no.
think so.
No. And then we've got some trombones. Then some horns. And that's basically it in this part. Let's put it all together. And just hear all the synth layers together without the rock instruments. Here we are. So, sounds a bit like a computer game.
It does. Now imagine this being recorded with a real choir and a real orchestra. It already sounds majestic in the song.
Yeah. But that definitely would be a dream come true.
It would.
So
We need
let's
sponsoring.
Yes, again. So let's hear it all together. So that's how the stuff sounds that I'm throwing at you, and now you can show us what you made of it, because mainly you adjusted the volumes, which was heavily necessary with that part, and also you replaced the guitar and bass sounds.
I did, and I think we replaced a few synth. I don't know anymore. We did a huge synth replacing or evaluating session and replaced some. But I don't.
Actually, two. We spent, if I recall correctly, two complete days by just going through every song and every synth track and evaluating if it's suitable or not.
We did, right. Okay, so let's head over. Okay, so now we are in the mix session, and let's have a look at the synth here. Let's listen to the whole part for a few seconds. And in the end, it was basically a balancing game. So I tried to take all these tracks and put them in their own place in the stereo field. And I had to do a lot of EQing so that they don't cancel each other out. Basically, each of these tracks has an EQ on it, but not so much more. What I did was to add a bit of distortion, for example, for the synth sounds. Just makes it a bit fuller. It's
subtle difference.
It's a subtle difference, definitely, yes. But there are also some effects on it. This one makes it a bit more lively. It's got some movement in it. We also have some tape going on, especially on the piano. Makes it a bit softer, maybe. And again, a lot of EQ. Everywhere where you can see this Q, it's just EQ, EQ, EQ. So let's listen to the part without any of this stuff in it. And again with it. So yeah, that's basically the synth. A lot of layering, a lot of EQ, and trying to make each instrument or voice as audible as possible, which is still something I'm very much learning.
I can imagine that I gave you some more headaches with other parts in other songs, because that's pretty light orchestration what I put on that section here. But if I recall the finale of Dukkha, for example, I guess there's way more going on in terms of like having 10, 12, 14 orchestral instruments at the same time, plus rock band, plus vocals.
Yes. And that's the tricky thing, actually, because they share so much frequency information, especially the guitar and strings, for example. They live in a very, in the same area, basically. So it's very, very subtle changes that can make a big difference when it comes to having them coexist in peace or just kill each other.
Yeah. So what I was wondering, if we stay in Boomerang and jump back to the only violin section we're having, I think, in that song.
Yes.
Maybe to tell a bit about that, I've got a friend and colleague who is a professional Baroque violinist. Her name is Latika, and she is really excellent, and she helped me out with recording quite a bit of stuff for the album. And even though she's a professional, we really struggled, at least with some material of it, with making use of it, because we had intonation issues, because it's a fretless instrument, it's the sound, the scratching noise of the bow, and our idea was basically, because we didn't have access to a whole orchestra, that we use a symphonic library and do all the MIDI stuff, and then put at least a violin on top of it to make it sound a bit more alive and realistic. And I'm wondering if we take a look at that section. I knew that some of the sections gave you headaches, and in others it worked really well. I think that was one of the trickier sections, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that was definitely a headache one. That's true. So I tried to balance the synth violin against the real recorded violin, because they both have their qualities. The real recorded one sounds more lively and, of course, more real. So I tried to blend them together. Again, basically doing it almost only by adjusting the volumes so that they complement each other, and by EQing them quite a lot, as you can see here on those two tracks. So let's listen to only the real recorded violin for a second. And then I added the synth violin. And they are admittedly quite loud, but if I take the real violin out while it's playing, you can clearly hear what it does. It adds a lot of life and the feeling of being real to it. So I think it's quite a nice blend.
Yes, that, and also lots of attack, and it makes the violins sounding much more on point.
Yes, they stand out more. I can imagine that if we try to listen to only the synth violin in the mix, that we can hardly notice it, or way less. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, you can clearly hear it cut through more when the real.
I didn't hear anything of the synth strings until you re-added the real violin.
Yeah. So it's about layering again. The whole album is about layering, basically.
Und darüber wollten wir auch noch.
Yeah, this is maybe one of my favorite parts on the whole album, and I don't know why, because it's basically only one chord going on. No, it's more.
It's not but even a chord, it's a note.
it's a note. It's a note, indeed. It's super simple, but I like how the character of the song changes over just a few bars, and it drastically changes, especially sonically, because the piano comes in. And I was really scared of finding a fitting piano sound. And in the end, we ended up using a Waves plugin from 15 years ago, which I bought in sale for $19 or something.
Really?
And it was super cheap. I bought it last minute because I couldn't find anything that worked. And then I thought, well, come on, let's give Waves the money. They suck. But anyways. And it works so good. I really like how this part ends, and this very dark and roomy sounding, not dark, but deep sounding piano comes in.
But before we listen to your version, we probably take a look into my DAW and listen to the crappy version I sent you with a much, much worse piano sound on it.
Show us what you got.
Yeah, not much. So that was it. I'll turn off the automation so I can make it a bit louder for you. Yeah, that's it. What I used was just some dummy soft piano from Spitfire, but it didn't do the job at all. So even if you hear it in context, it sounds like this. So that's the great thing when I'm sending you stuff. There's room for improvement.
Yeah, it sounds honestly awful. I didn't know. I couldn't remember that it was that bad. I don't know if I even tried with this sound. I mean, it's not a bad sound, but it just doesn't do the job in this part.
No, not at all. And it gets worse. It's not only that the sound is crappy. I played it on a 37 key MIDI keyboard without... I don't want to talk about it. But
no, it's good
sometimes
that we talk about
worked
it.
with rough conditions.
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually the same MIDI file we used on the record, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
See? So the 37 key MIDI keyboard wasn't the problem.
No. So let's listen to what you made out of it.
Yeah, so we're back in the mix session, and let's listen to the part first. it instantly puts you in a huge concert hall. I like it so much. Let's listen to the sound in solo. Super simple, but somehow super cool, and an amazing break in the song. So yeah, one of my favorite parts, and with a funny story behind it. 37 keys.
Yes.